Picture this. You're standing in a climate-controlled vault at Yale University, and behind thick glass sits a book. Nothing special about the outside. Cracked leather cover, yellowed edges, the kind of thing you'd walk past in an antique shop. But open it up, and something strange happens. Every single page is covered in flowing, elegant handwriting, in an alphabet that doesn't exist anywhere else on Earth. Not Latin, not Greek, not Arabic, Chinese, or any dead language linguists have ever cataloged. Just symbols, loops and swirls and little hooks, written confidently, fluently, like whoever wrote this knew exactly what they were saying. And scattered between the text are illustrations, plants that don't match any known species, naked women bathing in pools connected by tubes of green liquid, and circular diagrams that look like astrological charts for a solar system that doesn't exist. This is the Voynich Manuscript. And for over 600 years, not a single person, not a monk, not a codebreaker, not a supercomputer, has been able to read a word of it. So let's start with the obvious question. Where did this thing even come from? The book gets its name from Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who bought it in 1912 from a Jesuit college in Italy. He was convinced he'd stumbled onto something huge, and he spent the rest of his life trying to prove it. But the manuscript itself is way older than that. Using radiocarbon dating on the vellum, the calfskin pages it's written on, scientists traced it back to somewhere between 1404 and 1438. That's early 1400s. This book existed before Columbus sailed to the Americas, before the printing press was even invented. And here's where it gets eerie. Whoever made this book didn't cut corners. High-quality vellum, expensive ink, careful illustrations painted with real pigments. This wasn't some scribbled diary. Someone spent serious time and serious money creating this, which means it was meant to say something important. The question is, what? Over the centuries, the manuscript passed through a suspicious cast of characters. There's evidence it once belonged to Emperor Rudolph II of Bohemia, a guy famously obsessed with alchemy and the occult, who supposedly paid an enormous sum for it, believing it held secret knowledge. Legend even says he thought it was written by the medieval philosopher Roger Bacon, who some believed had discovered forbidden science centuries ahead of his time. From there, it disappeared into private libraries, monasteries, and Jesuit archives for hundreds of years before Voynich rediscovered it in 1912 and brought it back into the light. Now, once word got out that this undecipherable book existed, you can imagine what happened. Codebreakers could not resist it. Some of the sharpest cryptographic minds in history have thrown themselves at this thing. William Friedman, the man who helped crack Japanese military codes in World War II, spent decades of his life obsessed with the Voynich Manuscript and got nowhere. British and American intelligence agencies have taken cracks at it. Amateur codebreakers, university linguists, hobbyists with too much free time. Thousands of attempts across 100 years, and not one produces a translation that holds up. Here's what makes it so maddening. The writing isn't random. If you feed the text into computer analysis, it behaves like real language. The way certain symbols cluster together, the way word lengths follow a pattern, the frequency of repeated letters, it all mirrors the statistical fingerprint of actual human languages. This isn't just someone doodling nonsense symbols to look mysterious. Something rule-based is going on. There's structure. There's grammar, maybe. There's meaning, probably. But nobody can find the key. So over the decades, theories have piled up like crazy. Some think it's an unknown Romance language, written in a cipher alphabet. Some think it's actually a known language, maybe medieval Turkish or Hebrew. or even a form of shorthand, just so heavily encoded that we can't recognize it. One researcher claimed in 2019 that he cracked it using Proto-Romance roots, translating a phrase into something about nun bathhouse healthy women. But the wider academic world tore the theory apart for cherry-picking translations that don't hold together across the whole book. And then, there's the theory that stings the most, that the entire manuscript is an elaborate hoax. Maybe some clever medieval con artist created a fake language full of statistical patterns to make it look convincing, purely to sell it to a gullible nobleman for a fortune. Emperor Rudolph, remember, was famous for throwing money at anything occult. A meaningless but beautifully crafted fake would have been the perfect grift. There's even a modern theory involving glossolalia, that the writer entered some kind of trance state and wrote automatically, producing language-like text with no actual translatable meaning behind it, kind of like religious speaking in tongues, but on paper. Every single theory has passionate defenders. Every single theory has been picked apart by critics. And here's the thing that should really mess with you. Even with modern artificial intelligence, algorithms that can crack ancient Egyptian, decode lost Mayan glyphs, even reconstruct extinct languages from fragments, the Voynich Manuscript still hasn't budged. Machine learning models have chewed through the text, looking for patterns matching every known language family, and they keep coming back empty. So think about what that actually means. We've split the atom. We've landed rovers on Mars. We've mapped the entire human genome. And somewhere in a vault in Connecticut, there's a book written by a person using human hands for a human reason. And we genuinely cannot tell you what it says. Maybe it's medicine. Maybe it's a fantasy world someone invented 5 centuries before Tolkien. Maybe it's a religious text, a hoax, a diary, a spellbook. Maybe the answer is something so simple we'd feel silly once we knew it. Or maybe it's something that would rewrite what we think we know about the medieval world. Until someone finally cracks the code, the Voynich Manuscript just sits there behind its glass case, patiently keeping its 600-year-old secret. And honestly, maybe that's the most unsettling part of this whole story. Not that we can't read it, but that whoever wrote it knew exactly what it said, and took that meaning to the grave